Hi, welcome to my video. I'm Jennifer Roberts. You're catching me on my YouTube channel, True Divine 44. You can also catch me at my Facebook page, True Divine, and Instagram and Twitter is The True Divine. So I put out as much free content as I can, mainly via tarot, but this is something that I've wanted to do also. This sort of, I don't know what it's going to turn into. It's just somewhere to put my knowings, put the things that I've been through, and I feel like I might have some lessons regarding that might resonate with some of you guys. Lessons that I taught myself or learnt myself through whatever process that may be. A lot of my knowings come from that, and then they build and build and build, and I'm able to receive further knowings on those building blocks of those experiences that I have very often. And then I'll get knowings just seemingly out of the blue, higher self, conversing with me as it does, as I do, and being able to build a picture on that, and then usually seeing correlations after I've started that initial building of that picture. So it's just to bring them to you. I've known it's something I've needed to do, wanted to do, and I'm constantly taking copious notes of these knowings that I get and then not getting them out there. And so I have pads like this everywhere with, writing everywhere, various different sizes. So, but recently I've been talking about the energies being lit right now, and I've been talking about in the tarot readings that I do, this reset moment, this precipice, this point of bringing in a new reality, bringing in a new way of living, bringing in a new world. And that it feels like at times it could go either way, and it feels at times it is. It's not at times, it's real push and pull between what we would say is the negative and the positive. And so, and various different things being increased upon, i.e. attacks on the collective, things that are made to cause division, dissent, and violence, abuses, various other things within the collective, ultimately to separate. So we look at from social distancing to, the separation from self. They're going further and further down the line to create more problems for the individual and indeed the soul's journey, and indeed the thereafter. We needn't think that we just level up 100 levels because, we haven't done the inner work here. We haven't used this training ground as a training ground for the next ground. We need to take it more seriously. We need to let go of this idea of the 3D aspect of things and start to encompass that in so many more possibilities, and try to, the only way we can do that is by being self-reflective, being divine and sovereign, and doing the inner work. So a lot of these knowings will be about that. I'm going to tell you now, because that's the energy that we're in for this year, which is the energy we're in all the time, but intensely, for this year and the next year thereafter. So this is just to bring a knowing of something that I've known was coming. I've had a knowing about the fact that this time was going to come, this reset moment, and could dream of what it would bring, and it's brought about all of that and more. And so we're at the starting point almost, if you want to take it in the extreme energy level gauge, for me anyway, in that things are just getting started. There was a loosening of control. A planetary alignment was being set up, that if people would choose with intent and focus for a better future, they would be harnessing these alignments that are happening right now, because they're so powerful and so rare, and talk about reset in themselves, and the way they correlate with one another, the way they're opposing one another, working together in other aspects, so that it filters from as above, so below, way below and way above. This is truly a connected time where the intent and focus, whatever intent and focus there is most of, will surely bring that reality in. So it's important that we're on the right side of our intent and the right side of our focus right now. And so this part of this knowing was that, the powers that be that want to seek to not just have the same control that they've had before, no. They've always been seeking more control. And they too know about these planetary alignments, this time of reset. And instead of them being so disconnected from the occult, the hidden knowledge, having it passed down from generation to generation, not having been veiled from them at all, as it has a lot of the collective, they have also been ready for this time, building up to this time, and are going to harness it for all it's worth. And so there's the two sides, really, of the coin, or it should be the two sides of the coin. But the powers that be, the beings, the ones that want to keep this certain type of control and more, well, they've got the opportunity to do so at super fast speed compared to the normal speed that they can bring things around. This knowing was that they're going to really throw their destructive toys into the collective at a fast pace. Also knowing that people were going to be coming into more clarity, the 2020 clear vision, clear sight. They really needed to up the illusionary tactics in order to sort of, counterbalance that clear sight, that clear vision, that clarity. And so that's been happening. We've seen that happening. And people would be very lacking in wisdom to think, no matter how spiritually ascended they are, how spiritually knowing they are, no matter how capable they are in the 3D, no matter how much they have in the 3D, that they are immune to these attacks being thrown into your consciousness, into your reality. Attacks might not be the right word for the broad spectrum. I might refine that more as I go along, in that there are going to be things, as well as the collective stage, that seems to be getting triggered in various different ways, that cause pain, that cause hurt, that cause abuse, violence, and division, cause a separation, an argument, that was then going to be also reflected in our personal lives. Everything coming in on each other, reflecting in on each other, everything as above, so below, as within, so without. And so the knowing of that still didn't prepare me. I was still sort of buckled up, ready for something to, work on my weakest point, work on what I would call my trigger point. Still not quite. I thought I had it, pretty good. Clarity had been pretty good for the last couple of years. Focus, pretty good. Intent. Yeah, I thought I had it down pat. But still, I have enough wisdom to know that, although I couldn't imagine where it was going to come from, because I felt pretty whole, I'd done a lot of inner work and continue to do so. It is a continuous process, just like weed in the garden is. Even if you put concrete over your driveway, you still need to weed it, because life creates, weeds will pop through the tiniest crack in a pavement, in some concrete. And so it is continuous work. No matter what kind of surface layer you put over that inner work, you need to be doing it. So although I was ready, I'd started to get a bit complacent, and that was okay because I knew it was coming, but didn't quite know what. I didn't dream how it would come in, and it came in, and I feel that the powers that be, the real above powers that be, they know the codes of life. They know about the chakra system. They know about the DNA. They know how to hook in. They've had lots of practice at it. So they do know how to hook in to the human trigger points. And I think part of that has been that there is this feeling in me that, in particular, the 1 second, battery's been funny. We're back. Yeah, we're back. Sorry. That particularly for me is that I've been watching out for these chakra attacks. You know, these points we have in our body that reflect different aspects of ourselves, both attributes and weaknesses. And so the trigger point that came in swooping into my life out of nowhere was, or seemingly out of nowhere, was the heart chakra. And that was a shock to me because I thought I'd balanced that out pretty good. But with this swooping in of that would attack a trigger point in my, or bring up, attack isn't really the right word because I used it for good in the end, but you know, initially what felt like an attack breaking through my heart chakra, it was a shock because I realized I'd never felt like that before. This was new, and I know how to love. I know how to love deeply. I know how to feel connected to things and people. I know how to give love, and I can give love deeply. I can give a huge amount of compassion to a stranger as much as to somebody who I've known and loved a long time. And so this feeling made me realize, it made me remember a time that after a violent relationship, I locked up that heart chakra. And I mean, I was hurt in such a way that I worked for a solid year on strengthening the chains, visualizing the chains, wrapping them around, running around the heart, chaining that up. Yep, I was going to be able to have the capacity to love and appreciate nature. I was still going to have the capacity to love and appreciate my children. But that certain aspect of that heart chakra, I locked up good and tight. I visualized welding it shut. And I was quite happy and quite content that I would never feel that aspect of my heart chakra ever again, as long as I was here. And so it was a real shock that anything had penetrated through those chains, that wood, that wooden shack that I built and then chained it up again and then welding it shut, visualizing for a solid year to make sure that was well and truly done. Experienced all I wanted to experience of that. This unlocked that, and it was a shock. And it tested me, and I continued to try and keep that part of myself that felt comfortable in knowing that myself is my safety, myself is my comfortable space, myself is my passion, myself is my all, my everything. And in varying degrees, I started to bend to this feeling, this thing that had been thrown into my reality, and give a little, and give a lot more, and give a lot more. Now, through that, what I would have said an attack, but not an attack, if you know what I mean, that was illuminating, because I remembered that not all types of aspects of the heart chakra that resonate with that aspect of the heart chakra were bad. That in fact, this was even different to the part of the heart chakra that I initially locked up. This was something a lot more. This was something a lot more beautiful, a lot more kind, a lot more respectful. And so with that part of my heart chakra, the actual whole part of my being, things that run through me very deeply are loyalty and honor, integrity. And they're three core things that run through me very, very deeply throughout all my chakras. I try and live by them always through all of that. And I get very disappointed with myself if I feel I haven't. And I'm very judgmental of self if I feel I haven't. It's just something I've always had from being a little kid. And so, yes, that part of me also, I started to give, and gladfully so. You know, at this point, still feeling very uncomfortable, like a fish out of water, but still at that point having no choice but to, or feeling like I had no choice, but to give those parts of me that I'd locked up for so long, and 100 times more so. And so this trigger point, you know, was running deep within me now. So much so that I stopped being wary of it. I stopped being discerning of it. Even my other chakras coming into play, even my other gifts coming into play, psychic abilities, knowings, gut feelings, instinct, energy. I was overriding those with this part of this heart chakra that had been opened up. I was deliberately overriding them, and I see that now. And so with that, then this really did turn into a trigger, because as fast as this lesson, this trigger bounced into my life, bounced back out again. It's like a bouncy ball, bouncing, causing havoc, breaking down walls, bang, 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 out again. And I was left like, whoa, that feels very strange. Because now I feel real deep hurt. I feel real deep betrayal. What is that about? And because I can roll with the punches pretty well now, you know, with lessons, triggers, you know, things, inner work. And it had various degrees of symptoms that came with it, in that I was sleep deprived. I couldn't sleep, and I couldn't eat. I wasn't functioning as me for a very short time, because I am good at transmuting shit, but you know, still for me that was intense, and it was a like, whoa, shock. So that was one of the energies that I was always going to pick up, because nobody is immune to these energies right now collectively, and that's the difference. That's why we're seeing so much uproar in the streets and stuff like that, because trigger points are going off everywhere, because of the energies, because of the alignments, because of certain aspects of inner work that none of us are immune to. This we haven't done, or we haven't done enough of. So at varying degrees, we're going to have these trigger points, and we're going to have our reactions to them, and then it's up to us how we focus and intent our way through that, to navigate ourselves back through that, to make it worthwhile, and not let it be another wound or another something that you bury, that you concrete over. And so I had to look at things, first the physical symptoms. I wasn't sleeping and I wasn't eating. And I realized that because I'd become complacent, I had put something on a pedestal outside of me. Now, I've gotten really good at serving me first. You know, we shouldn't serve anybody but God, right? Well, we are God. Our higher selves are our gods. And so to put anything before that does not only yourself a disservice, Jennifer, it also does the other people, the other things involved in that trigger a disservice. It ultimately sets both sides, no matter what they might be, up for a fall, because nobody can compare to your own divinity and sovereignty. So when you start giving more of self energetically than you're keeping back, when you start to serve and look up to somebody else more than and not equal to than yourself, then you're in trouble, because you're serving someone else. And that could be anything, i.e. your church, anything that you put above the service to self first. And so it gave me a real workout to do. So there was that I'd done. The next thing was that why this sleep deprivation? Why can't I switch off at all? Now, I find it hard to switch off at the best of times for various reasons. That sometimes I need to stay up, and sometimes it is the energy that I'm picking up on, and I'm either buzzing and dancing around at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, or I'm exhausted, wanting to go to sleep, but I can't shake off that side of the energy either. And so, but this was different. This was to the point where I could hardly stand up after a few days, because I wasn't eating anything either. And I was picking up on other energies involved in this trigger point that had been thrown into my reality. And so I wondered, what was that about? And part of the lesson was that of the complacency, Jennifer, the complacency that you preach about. That the very time you needed to be most aware of lessons that would be coming your way, and depending on how you held yourself within that lesson, was going to determine how much of a pickup job, a cleanup job you had at the end of it. And I gave away too much of it, so I suffered to get back up to the top with the lessons learned and breathe again, let's start the Fool journey now. And part of that was that I, during this time more than ever, when there is going to be so many triggers being thrown into not most people's lives, everybody's lives, on every layer, from right at the top, the hidden hand kind of thing, to the governments, to the police, the services, all of the services, to the schools, to the communities, to the people, the families, right down to the individual. I should have put planets at the top of that, so think of all of those layers and all of that kind of energy. That's an avalanche of triggers and lessons coming down, and none of us are immune. And so the sleep deprivation was in order for me, because I'm very careful with not sleeping very much. I'm very careful about closing my energetic doors and windows, so to speak, when I'm not asleep. Even when I go to sleep, I do that anyway before I do, but when I'm not asleep and sleep deprived, because it is a dangerous space for you to be, mixed up with things that, might want to play around with your energy a bit or infiltrate those thoughts. And so I realized that I was going to have to be very conscious of that during this period of sleep deprivation, because I just couldn't switch off. I couldn't sleep. I had no peace. But and it was all frustration with self, because I have ascended enough to not put frustration too much outside of self. For a very short time I can, and then I pull that back, because it all belongs. The only thing that even should bother me belongs with me and me only, and I'm answerable to me about that. And so the sleep deprivation was wise up to, during this time of where it's going to be trying energetically, where it's going to be trying physically and emotionally and mentally, where you're going to be deprived on many fronts, because there is much diversionary tactics going on. There is much attack, spiritual attack, physical attack, mental attack, emotional attack going on right now. Nobody is immune to these energies with these planetary alignments and the filtering down of that. You need to be able to be in control of yourself. You need to be able to still control those doors and windows and block off that which doesn't serve you, that doesn't give you the equal back to what you're giving out, to that doesn't resonate with you. And so to be able to stay awake and aware during this time is most paramount. And I became complacent. And why does it come back to self? Was because I started to have knowings that I have. I started to have gut instincts. I started to be able to read the situation for it being a bit different to what it was or seemed. And I ignored them. I got swept up in the energies. Why did I do that? Well, yes, it might have meant something, it might have not. I'm past even asking that question. But also, I did that because I had been self-sabotaging. Just because I went through something painful in the past, painful enough that would have me chain up my part of my heart chakra, which if I'm chaining up part of it, let's be real, I'm limiting all of it. And so if it can't work in its entirety, it's not working at its optimum. And so I was answerable for the fact that you chain and hide away any part of yourself. You hide it away in shame, you hide it away out of fear, you hide it away out of pain, whatever the reason might be, it matters not. If you chain it up and hide it away, the energy of it is that you are ashamed of it. It's something to be ashamed of. It's something that hurts. It's something that, it isn't pleasant. And so because of the planetary alignments and the energies around, for whatever reason, real or not, this trigger point was thrown into my consciousness, into my reality. And because I had been lacking in wisdom when I chained up that part of my heart chakra, the moment that trigger hooked into that part of my heart chakra, like a fish hook, all of these emotions that have been locked up for so many years came flooding out like a tidal wave. Whether that was to the right source or the wrong source or not, again, matters not. The key thing for me was that it was a case of, this was a force to be reckoned with. This was like a tsunami to be reckoned with. And that tsunami was met with another tsunami. And so it was intense. It was both liberating and exciting. But because I'd locked it up and I had that tsunami, instead of me being able to do what I normally do and channel my energy with intent, flow, yet control, I got swept away in the tsunami. And because of that, I forgot those skills regarding this aspect of my heart chakra. I forgot to stay in dominion over them. I forgot to, that tsunami swept over. All of the noise of that tsunami actually stopped me from listening to my gut, actually stopped me from listening to my instincts, to the morphing situation and me reading those morphs and changes in the situation. And so I did a disservice to myself. And through that also I felt, so that was 1 or 2 lessons, I don't know how many I've talked about in that rant, but the next lesson being about wounded honor and wounded integrity. And so at first feeling very upset regarding and disappointed, bitterly disappointed in the lack of honor and the lack of integrity. And again, after a few days, realizing that that was an empty vessel. If I didn't feel I'd gotten honor and integrity there, then why was I still searching for it there? And so bringing that back to self, I hadn't honored myself. I hadn't honored the uncomfortable feeling at first. I hadn't honored the side of me that has knowings, that has insights. And so because of that, I dishonored myself in the situation and actually self-sabotaged that situation, because that's one of my core principles, the honor, integrity. And so even if that situation was destined in the stars to be the wildest, most great experience ever, and another layer to an awesome experience that is our experience here, I dishonored that. I dishonored the potential of that, let's say, because who knows, but I dishonored the potential of that because I was releasing a tsunami because of my past actions, dishonoring myself, locking part of myself away in chains, going to the nth degree to make sure that I kept, pummeling that home, that bit was locked up. And so with that pain was released because I had to forgive of myself. That wasn't hard because now because I'd done some self-reflecting and inner work, I understood self, and so there was nothing more to forgive. It was another lesson, another few lessons, and then the gifts start to emerge from it. Because of that self-reflection, that realizing of there's nothing more to forgive. It's a continuous process, molding ourselves and growing and expanding ourselves. And as long as you're growing and expanding and not devolving, then all good. And so the next things came that I needed to reconnect back to me. This had been such a whirlwind, in and out, tsunami, bouncy ball. And so this then called for me to remind myself that when was the last time I did my natural practices? When was the last time I did connect with nature? When was the last time I did the deep breathing that I do? When was the last time? It was before all of this happened. I'd let go of all of the things that keep me grounded, of all of the things that keep me whole, of all of the things that are the continuous process of staying whole and staying on your journey and having that guiding light at the brightest it can possibly be. And so it was like, no wonder you're suffering. It's not just even from this flaming experience. It's the fact that you haven't even had the normal healing, self-healing and self-grounding that you normally have just for daily life, let alone a trigger experience. And so with that, I started to do the things that I needed to do. I took it to the Great Mother, and dug my feet into that ground, into that soil, dug my fingernails into the soil, and transmuted that, and got the gift of breath, of life again, of grounding, of, oh, I'm still here, I'm still me. It's a close one. And so it was with that I was reminded of all of those things. But because all of a sudden those chains were still off that aspect of my heart chakra, because all of the wood and the chakra built around it, and the chains and the welding, and because that was all off still, it was still very raw and open and in its entirety. When I dug my feet into the soil and my fingers into the soil, the connection was stronger. The connection was more intense. I was feeling the same intense feelings for the Great Mother, for creation itself, for me. And so that was a beautiful thing. And I thought, damn, Jenny, why didn't you, figure this out when you know this shit, not to hide away any side of self, to work with it, to expand it, to give it wisdom, but don't lock it away, don't hide it. And that was mind-blowing, and that forest danced around me that day. The energy danced around me. The energy around me was celebrating just as much as me. Finally, there's a circuit board here, the full circuit board. There's not that part of the heart chakra that we have to sort of keep jumping the spark over to bridge. We don't need a bridge. We've got the full flow here. We've got a circuit from the soil of the fingers to the shoulders, the head, and down again, legs, toes, full circuit. And that showed me that there are beings that have great honor, and creation itself is that if you give it your whole, it gives you back the whole. And so nature is always a calling point to say, come back home, see what work I can do with you here, see what the forest can do here. And so that was a huge blessing. In general, I feel that because of the way I dealt with it afterwards, even crashing afterwards, the sleep deprivation, the not eating, that's not me. But even that has been a great gift, because I feel like it gave me a reminder just in time. Because if we think stuff's hit the fan, it's going to keep increasing. And so just in time to make sure that I was aligned completely, and that I was as whole as I could be completely, and that that reminder, that training ground, that boot camp of like, come on, there's just a few things that are gonna really sink you if you don't refine them right now, in the energies that are around us right now, and the energies that are coming, the trigger toys that are getting thrown into the collective. You need to be whole. It's part of your role to be here to help keep others whole, or help others keep themselves whole, should I say, sorry. And so it was, for me, a gift, just like the universe does, just in time. And I called it in. I needed to be whole, for the role that I'm here to play, especially during this time. So for me, it was both, in its entirety, not both, a beautiful thing. And I just want to say to people that there is this feeling that, what am I trying to say? That trigger points have to be negative. And we all joke on, not all of us, but a lot of us, the triggered, hashtag triggered. And in a way, we mock. And in a way, so we should, because it, a lot of it on the collective stage anyway is so staged and so planned. It's not even a real flaming trigger. So, that's what we're mocking when we mock it. But a real trigger, that touches somebody, and it's going to touch every single one of us in varying degrees, depending on the work that we need to do with ourselves, depending on what we've locked